All right, so let's look at the one that skier glides down a slope with friction. So because there are no angles given, we're just going to go with the normal up and down type of thought process here. So it doesn't say that there's any applied force. The only thing that you can see is the force of gravity, which we know, which is 700 newtons. The mountain pushing back against would also be 700 newtons, okay? The friction force is going to be 50 newtons, and that's the force of friction, okay? You don't have and aren't given what any of the applied was. So looking at this, looking at it as it is and what you are given, what is the net force? The net force has to be 50 newtons to the left or a negative 50 newtons. Okay, that's what, looking at it the way it is. Now physics, we will be doing it in a different way going forward, where when there's angles given, we're going to be using sine, cosine, and tangent to be able to figure it out, turn it into a triangle and go from there, which we'll be doing in two-dimensional motion as well. But that's kind of how this is going to be, this is how we're going to do this for now. All right, so that's the skier glides down a slope with friction. A bird perches on a horizontal tree branch. When a bird perches, that means they are not in motion. All right, that means they've come to a stop, they're taking a rest. So, what do you have? Perches on a horizontal tree branch. Well, the weight of Fg is what? 2 newtons. What's the reactionary force? Force normal. Just like it always would be. 2 newtons. Net? Zero newtons. Simple as that. Just because the wording changed doesn't mean anything else changed. It's force normal. That's the remember, pairs, forces act in pairs except for free fall. It's the only one, okay? Free fall is the only one that does not act in pairs. All right, so let's do the next one. Glad the Sixers won last night, beat the Bullets, or beat the Wizards, the worst team in basketball. But that's your Easter egg. All right, so a crate is being lifted upward by a cable at a constant speed. So it's going up and down. There's no left, right. It's going up and down. So you have force of gravity, which is 800 newtons. So it's going at a constant speed. What's the tension going to be? So if something is in motion, it stays in motion in a straight line until an unbalanced force acts upon it. So it's being lifted upward at a constant speed. So what's your tension going to be? The force of tension, 800 newtons, because it's moving at a constant speed. So your net force zero newtons. It will continue to move at that constant speed until an unbalanced force acts upon it. All right. So part 2. Woo, it's going to be fun. Part 2. So a block hangs motionless from a pulley while connected to another block resting on a table. All right, so here we go. Here's your one block. It hangs motionless from a pulley. So you have force gravity, which is 50 newtons. You have force tension, hangs motionless, 50 newtons. While connected to another block resting on a table. Well, if you wanted to do the block resting on a table, same deal, right? Force of gravity would be 50 newtons. But force normal would be 50 newtons for the table block. This is the hanging block. Okay. Net force, 0 newtons, because neither one of them are moving. Okay. So the tension in the rope, and it's one rope, so therefore you don't have to break anything up. You don't have to do any different changes or anything else like that. All right. I'm going to call my pattern 7 out, saying that they struggled with the first part of this. All right. Who said that out loud? Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. A person pushes a suitcase across a carpet floor. Okay. So it's on the floor. So right away, you know you're going to have all four of, there's going to be force going in 4 different directions. Okay. So you have force gravity. Doesn't matter. Force normal. Doesn't matter. You don't need a magnitude for it. Okay. Person is pushing a suitcase across the carpet floor. Actually, you do have it. It's just 150 newtons. This is 150 newtons. Your friction force, your force of friction is 40 newtons, right? So if a person is pushing a suitcase across the carpeted floor, what does the force applied have to at least equal for that suitcase to be able to move? What does it have to equal for that suitcase to be moving? Doesn't say it's at a constant speed. Doesn't say anything. It just says it's being pushed across a carpeted floor. So what would it have to be? It has to be greater than 40 newtons. Okay, and because it's moving to the right, your net force must be greater than 40 newtons, and it would be to the right. All right? Does that make sense? For it to move, it's got to be greater. The friction is 40 newtons. For it to move, it's got to be great. That number that you're applying has to be greater than the 40 newtons of friction that are against it. Okay. Are we good on that? Yay, nay, maybe? Who cares? I don't really care. All right, so let's look at this one. A child slides down a slide. Everybody's favorite playground toy, right? Okay. So a child slides down a playground slide. Consider friction. Okay, well, in this situation, the force of gravity is, oopsies, eraser. $250 newtons. What's the friction force? 30, right? Slides down a playground slide. Well, eventually the person's going to stop. Okay, but this would be net force 220 newtons down, or minus 220 newtons is what I would take. Questions? I will do the rest of these in a third video, and we'll go from there. You only have there's only an Easter egg in the second video so far. All right, peace.